Hello, friend. Hello. God damn. I don't know what just happened. Hello, friends. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 555 of the Juicebox Podcast. I might leave that in. One day, a man named Michael sent me a message. I get a lot of messages, so there's nothing inherently new or different about that. But there was something about Michael's tone, even in writing, that made me worried for him a little bit. So I did my best to help him. I pointed him towards some episodes that I thought would help. And this is a conversation with that person, who I've really grown to enjoy. And I think you're going to like him too. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I saw last night, like, you're apprehensive or nervous, and I was just really, I'm so excited to talk to you that I was weirded out that you were nervous. I was like, oh God, what did I do to make this guy feel uneasy about this? But are you okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Good. Now I'm super excited to talk to you for reasons that we'll get into as we're talking. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Absolutely the best blood glucose meter I've ever held, touched, or used. Whatever. I'm raising my hand to the whatever you raise your hand to when you're swearing. contournext.com/juicebox. I love that meter. Check it out. And today we have a new advertiser. Drum roll, please. We don't have any drum roll sound effects. TrialNet. Woo! Ba-boom. You just imagine the whole big thing. TrialNet is a sponsor. TrialNet, you know TrialNet. They offer free risk screening. Ooh, risk for what, Scott? Type 1 diabetes. Free type 1 diabetes risk screening. You can do it right from your home if you want to. I'm going to tell you all about it later, but for now, just know this. TrialNet.org/juicebox. Free type 1 diabetes risk screening. There's some criteria for who's eligible, but it's a lot of people, and I'm going to fill you in the center. I might even, at the end, I might go all through it. I haven't decided. It's a lot of information. I don't want to gum up the works. I might tell you a little more in the middle. Well, now I'm doing it here anyway. Anyway, you're going to find out more in a little bit. Welcome, TrialNet. I think if you're listening from TrialNet, you just heard that, you're super comfortable with where you've spent your ad dollars, because that was clear as mud. TrialNet.org/juicebox. I promise I'll make it clear later.
I'm Mike, and I'm just a regular dad, and my daughter, she's the T1D warrior. She's 10 years old, and
that's about it, right? How long ago was she diagnosed?
January of 2020.
Wow. Over a year.
Yep.
When did you and I first speak about? Do you know?
I want to say it was March of 2020.
Okay. So about 3 months into her diagnosis. So, my brain is very simple, Mike. So things stick out to me for reasons. So we're not going to say your last name, but your name is different enough that it sticks out to me. There are some people that send me notes, and I don't know who they are. But I'm always aware of who you are. And is it fair to say that by the time you thought to reach to me, you were in a panic?
Oh, I was clueless.
Okay.
That's there's no other way about it. It's like, they sent us home to take care of our daughter with a piece of paper and say, oh, well, everything just changed, but here's this piece of paper you got to live by now. And that piece of paper wasn't working.
It wasn't very helpful. It's difficult sometimes to feel people through writing, but you felt like you were vibrating. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you're not So then how do I explain this? So I want to help when I hear from you right away. And then there's this interesting thing that happens too, because men don't reach out nearly as much as women do, but the men that reach out are usually very, like caregiver oriented dads. Like I don't get a lot of guys who are, I get up in the morning before the sun, I go to work, I come home, I eat, I grunt, I go to bed. Like I don't meet those men. You know what I mean? So I know you're gonna be a person who's really been involved in your kid's life and has a lot going on at the moment. But I'm so much better at talking to women, Mike. So like so I'm just like, oh, I wonder how this will go. And I feel like in present day, you guys are doing pretty well. Is that a fair assumption?
The A1C, we got our A1C to about a 6.1 as of right now. Mm-hmm. And we haven't been over a 6.5 since this whole thing.
Okay. What was the origin of the nervousness in the beginning? Like what had you upset? The only thing I knew about diabetes was there was an old man on a commercial that used to say diabetes. And that was the only thing I knew about diabetes. I had no clue. I thought diabetes was just something that old people got. Mm-hmm. And well, all of a sudden that just got thrown out the window. And then it's just something about having to give your child a shot when the most you know about any type of medical thing is rub some dirt in it and you're going to be all right. It was just life-changing, total life-changing. Yeah.
And I don't like change too much. And when it just happened overnight, you got to do it.
And you can't say no to it or say, well, let me give me a minute to think about it. It's just, here it is and go do it. And that's it. How did you find me? Like, how did we end up talking?
It went from, all right, I'm in a Facebook group for auto glass techs because that's what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. And I met a guy on there who he's type 1 and so is his daughter. And, everybody's the same age. Like I'm almost the same age as him. His daughter's the same age as my daughter. And he was like, dude, you need therapy. He just flat out said, you need therapy. You are stressing way too much about this. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. So I started finding like support groups on Facebook.
Okay.
And then the podcast got brought up a few times. I was like, I don't listen to podcasts. Well, we'll try this. And I think the first episode I actually listened to was the one I think was called When You Decided to Share or something like that.
Right.
It was like one of the first episodes.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this dude gets it. And I just keep listening, man. And I learned so much from that.
That's really cool because, I think there's a lot to learn here for people because I would think that if you take diabetes out of the mix, you and I don't appear to have anything in common where we would meet like in a way where you were in a spot where somebody was telling you, hey, you might need therapy. And you're like, no, I found a guy named Scott. It's going to be fine. Like, I don't know. I just can't imagine that would happen and without this common denominator for us. And not because we come from different walks of life, but just because guys don't really, this is not how we generally do things. Like,
yeah. It's like, as a dad, you're like, okay, well, I can fix this. You can fix anything.
Right.
You got a water pipe busted, you fix it. You got a car broke down, you fix it. And you got problems at school, you go fix it. Mm-hmm. Well, then you get diabetes thrown into the mix. You can't fix that.
Right. And it'll make you crazy.
Yes. Yeah. But what I've learned is maybe I can't fix it, but I can manage it. Right. And I could do the best I can to manage it. And that's relieving to know that I can manage it.
I agree. So would you say that as a parent, this is the first thing that's come up that didn't have a finite answer? Something that...
Yes.
Yeah. It's a horrible first thing to be in that situation with. Can I ask, this is going to sound disconnected for a second, but has there been much death in your life, or do most of the people are they still alive?
No, there's been uh 2019, I went to like 5 different funerals.
Oh my.
And, my dad died, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, it's yeah. So when I hear diabetes, the instant thing of, oh, well, she got this. We ain't got long. Now it's time to panic.
Feels like panic. Yeah. I asked because until like the last couple of years of my life, I just didn't know many people who had died. And that's the most finite thing I can think of that you have to deal with, because there's no, you don't get to wish your way out of it. Right. So, diabetes is like that, in that it's just not going to be 100% fixable. And then you have to make your peace with that. What do you think would have happened to you if you didn't make peace with it?
Well, I didn't sleep for, I don't know, 5 months. I would sleep 30 minutes at a time. And then up until recently, I started setting alarm clocks for every 2 hours. And then I just realized that I was sitting up from in between and just watching the Dexcom numbers, and that wasn't healthy. And I think I would have probably had a heart attack at the rate I was going. Yeah,
I know that feeling. I really do. I've said those words to my wife. I said, I have to figure something else out or I'm going to have a heart attack. There's a weird line once the sleep is, like, once you get past tired and you're just existing in like that zombie state, everything, like your chest feels tight and your head feels light, and it's a bad way to be. You have to sleep. It's funny when I speak in public, so when I'm kind of speaking in a set amount of time, it's so management oriented, but at the very end, I throw in these two things. I tell people, if your doctor says no, you should ask why, and you have to get sleep. And those two little things must seem like they don't go in any way with the bigger conversation, but that's how important I think they are. That if I have the opportunity to say it to anybody, I always will, because I know what happens. I mean, you get on the wrong side of exhaustion, and it's a bad deal. Well, Mike, I have to tell you, your notes are. I was talking about this with my wife last night. I was telling her I was going to do this with you today, and I said this is going to be super interesting. I said, because in the beginning, I couldn't read you in the beginning, and because you're very direct. But then I realized that you're just a guy communicating. Like, there's no like fluff to what you write. But that's right. But in the very beginning, I read it as, in the first note or so, I read it as demanding, and then I realized it wasn't. And I just demanding meaning like, hey, I have a question. You're now going to answer my question. But then I realized that's not. I realized I was like, that's not what this is. It's just he's a guy. He's not going to. There's no pretty words that go around this. Here's the question. What's the answer? Let's get out of this. Thank you. But I've come to really appreciate our correspondence now, because it's quick, and I like it that way.
And it's like, I try not to bother you. It's like, I actually communicate with you more than I do our team of doctors. and there again, it's because our team of doctors, they're awesome. They're amazing. I could not ask for anything better.
Yeah.
But they're all women. And it's just weird to just ask for help, if you know what I mean. And with you, it's like, for a while you were just like a faceless entity. Mm-hmm. So I don't really, I don't see you. I don't have to come in contact with you later. I could just ask you a question, and it's kind of like the man pride thing,
Right.
Nobody knows where I'm getting these answers from. I just got the answer.
Mike, you're
making that makes any sense at all.
Not only is it making sense, but you're making me think that if I developed a speaker, like a Amazon Echo Siri type speaker, that you could only ask diabetes questions of, I could be rich selling them to people. No, but I do understand, and I hope that people understand listening too, because you're from the South, right? You're from Louisiana.
No, I'm in South Carolina.
South Carolina. I'm sorry. You're not going to get that bad weather today, are you?
No, it's coming tomorrow, I think.
No kidding. It's just tornadoes everywhere today. There's like tornado warnings everywhere. But anyway, I think that's I think that's a geographic idea, and probably generational too. How old are you?
I am 35.
35. So you think it's more geographic, the idea of like, it's hard to ask for help? Like you're saying it's hard to ask women for help for things. Is that right?
Yeah. It's even hard to ask, like, I go to church all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in church a lot now. I find myself in church more since diabetes than before then.
Okay.
But it's even hard to ask some of my close friends that are males for help. It's like, I'm a man. I can do this by myself.
Okay. So it doesn't have as much to do with who you're asking, just in fact that you have to ask it all.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just learning that all the time, you can't be Superman is the biggest lesson diabetes has taught me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. You're talking about if a pipe break a pipe or fix a pipe. Do you know how many people buy a house and then open a wall and go, the guy that fixed this did not know what he was doing?
Yep.
And it really is. I don't think it's appreciated by my wife and maybe some other women either, but you do have that feeling as a guy. You're like, I'll just fix this any way I can figure out how to do it. And it's often not right. And it's not applicable with diabetes. You can't MacGyver diabetes. You know what I mean? Like you got to have the right tools. And then once you have the right tools, I mean, it's easier. You also are interesting because you describe yourself, like you're very quick to describe yourself as like a simple person, but you're a type A personality, aren't you?
I don't really know.
You don't know? You're a perfectionist, Mike. You don't know that about yourself? Or is it just about the diabetes?
Yeah, I am a perfectionist.
Okay. All right. Because I hear from two different kinds of people most frequently. And I want to say before I say this is I got a note from a lady yesterday and I was answering her back and then I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I dictated this. There's a lot of spelling mistakes in here. I'm driving. And she's like, oh, I did not mean to bother you while you were driving. And I said to her, it's not a bother. I would not have answered you if it was a bother. Like that's like, like if you're hearing back from me, I mean to, like, you're not pressuring me into getting back to you is my point. So, but so there's two kinds of people that we talk to. Either people are super lost and they need help, right? Or they get to a point where they're showing you graphs that look like concrete sidewalks with one little dip in it. And they're like, what do you think this problem is? And I'm like, ooh, you might be the problem at this point. because this is amazing and you're still worried about it. And you've come a long way, but you would send me stuff and I'd be like, wow, I can't believe he's this worried about this graph. This graph looks pretty good. And so can you talk about the desire to make it perfect?
It's like, I seen this thing that was, somebody sent me a picture about, what high blood sugar does over a course of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's 10. She's got a long life ahead of her. So the flatter I can keep this line now, the bigger my chances of, normal life stuff, like having grandkids by her and walking her down the aisle. That's my end game to this. I want to see her be successful as an adult.
Okay. You feel like you're buying time.
Exactly.
Okay. So now you are, and at the same time you aren't. And Jenny reminds me of this when I talk to her sometimes, and I'm glad she does, that you could manage your daughter's blood sugar perfectly for a decade. And if she goes off at 20 years old and doesn't match that management, if it gets lesser, the damage that'll come from that time will not be bolstered by the good job you did the first 10 years. So a big part of your job, all of our jobs really as parents, is going to be to figure it out and then figure out how to explain it in a way that makes it doable for them. Not just doable functionally, but in a way that makes it so that they want to do it, so that it's easy enough to do that it doesn't feel burdensome, which is, I think, maybe the bigger challenge.
Yeah, and most of my micromanaging that, because I understand I micromanage it to a extreme, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my micromanaging, she doesn't even know is taking place because, with the Omnipod, And the Dexcom, I can just look at her numbers and take her PDM and make any adjustment I need to do real quick. And she don't even know what I'm doing half the time.
Right.
And she's just now starting to be carb conscious. Like a friend of mine, he loves those Monster energy drinks. Mm-hmm. And she grabbed his can and looked at the carbs and was like, look how many carbs in this and that. She went on a whole tirade about that, which was awesome because at least that was the first time that I've seen her actually look at a label.
Okay.
So she's just picking up really slowly.
Yeah, it takes time. Just last night, Arden came to me kind of late and she's like, I'm thinking about a snack. And I was like, all right. I said, well, let's bolus now. And she was like 120. So we're at the end of a pump. So she's like a little higher than I want her to be. So we're trying to get through the end of the pump. And I said, well, let's bolus now because it's going to take a little longer. And then she went to get food. And I said, I'm going to put 45 carbs in here, because she was talking about grapes and something else. And, but then she waited a little long and thought, well, since I'm lower than I mean to be now, I'm going to grab chocolate milk instead. And so the carb count was the same, but the impact was different. And I wasn't with her and she didn't think to say to me, hey, I took this instead of that. And I do think that that's a disconnect for her. Like, I don't think she was considering the glycemic load of the food. And, I guess I don't really want her wandering around worrying about it all the time, but it would have been nice last night because then it created a situation where we had to bolus again and it got out of where we wanted it to be and turned into a little fight that lasted 45 minutes, fight with the insulin and the food. I mean, but it made me feel like it's going to take time. So all I did this morning was when I saw her, I said, hey, last night when you swapped this out for that put us in a situation where we actually needed more insulin. This hits you harder than these do. And she was like, okay. And I left. Like, I didn't make an issue of it or anything like that because it's a long fight. You know what I mean?
That's right. And see, I know I kind of sounded a little sexist in the beginning of this, but I do want to say that, my wife, she is an absolute rock star at this. Like, I could not do what she does. Like, I handle most of the technology end of it, and I handle the doctor's appointments, and I come up with I'm a coach. I coached Little League football for a while. I'm coaching my son still as he's in high school, even though I'm not on the field with him. I'm still coaching him as far as weight training and all this good stuff. Mm-hmm. So I come up with the game plan, and she executes it, and she executes it perfectly. She does all the meal prep. She does the dosing and all this good stuff. But I handle, I do the research. I do the all the changing out. So I do, all the emergency. Oh, well, we got a low blood sugar. What do we do here? But my wife is a rock star at this.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Two things. First, I didn't think you sounded sexist. I felt like you sounded a little like traditional is just kind of how it felt to me. Like, my father would have had trouble asking a woman for help. Like, he just would have. And I don't know why, and I'm not saying it's right, but he would have. It didn't come off as sexist to me. It just felt like it might have been your truth. So are you saying with your wife, like, you have the worry and she does the work? Is that
that's right?
That's the division?
That's right.
Did you do that because that's where you fit naturally, or were you protecting your wife?
Protecting my wife from having to deal with any of the stress.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel like that a lot here too. Like, I don't want this to fall to anybody else. Yeah, we're very similar, Mike, in a number of ways. You have that feeling that you just like, well, I'll do it all, right? Like let the bad stuff fall on my shoulders, and then I'll filter it and give it to them.
That's right.
Yeah, I hear you. You feel like you're going to be dead sooner? Because I do sometimes.
Sometimes I think about that, but just recently I started actually going back to the gym and finding time to take care of myself. Good.
It's incredibly important because now you've become, and you will as time goes. I mean, your daughter's only 10. You have a lot of time in this, even before she even talks about moving out or going to college or something like that. So you're going to be a repository of information in the next decade. she can't lose you now. Like, you're just going to become valuable. You know what I mean? You're going to be like a set of encyclopedias for her. But how do you, you're so early in it. I think about it more now, but like, how do you set up a situation where she'll feel comfortable asking you, 21 years old, sitting in a dorm room somewhere, wondering about a bolus? Like, how do you make it so it's so comfortable that she just sends you a text and says, hey, I'm about to have this. I don't know how to bolus for it. You know, do you have any idea? And it be that easy, just a couple seconds and on your way again. Like, I get texts from my son while he's at school about things he doesn't understand all the time. You know, they're just not about health.
I got like a 2-part answer. One, you know, when I've been so open with all of my kids about every aspect of my life, and there was some pretty dark years before kids, and I've been so open with it. And, you know, we don't try to, I've never sugarcoated anything to it. I just, you see the way I text, it's just blunt and to the point.
Yeah. And
that's the way I've always talked to them. I said, you know, this is this because of this, and that there's no way around it. And then 2, I'm learning with her, if I make it a joke, if I make her laugh during a question, she will come ask me another one.
Because the interaction's pleasant for her.
Yep.
Yeah. That's smart. That's really smart. You didn't imagine diabetes was going to make you a better father, did you?
I had no clue, man. I thought it was going to make me a neurotic mess for a long time.
I got to tell you, 6-8 months ago, I would have put $50 on you falling apart. Just so you know. It's interesting though, because you had the one thing that people need. It was desire. Like, really, you had the desire and the focus to figure it out. And I find that to be very important when I'm speaking to people. There are some people who are as lost could be, but you can tell it doesn't matter. They're not giving up.
And it's like part of the reason why that I was just, I'm so determined to get diabetes right, or as right as I possibly can, was the year before my daughter got diagnosed. My sister donated a kidney to a random stranger. And he ended up with kidney problems because of the lack of taking care of his diabetes. And so this is fresh in my mind that this just happened. And then my daughter gets diagnosed. And just the father side of me says I cannot let that happen.
That's how I feel about it. So I'm with you. And the younger, you know, it's funny, there's this trade-off. Like, you say, like, oh, Scott's daughter was diagnosed when she was 2. It's great. She doesn't know another way. But, you know, the other side of it is when Arden was diagnosed back when she was 2, which is now going to be, I mean, we're coming up on, 15 years ago, maybe? Like, she was 2 and she's going to be 17 this summer. So we're coming up on that, right? And, you know, back then, one of the things that doctor said to me to comfort me was, don't worry, complications from diabetes don't start for 30 years. And I thought, so when she's 32, like,
that's exactly what I thought too.
Like, that doesn't feel like a upbeat thing to say to me right now. But that was the vibe that I was left with, which was, hey, don't worry, your daughter's not going to have real health problems till she's 32. And I thought to myself, I didn't even know which way was up until I was 29. Like, you're gonna,
exactly.
She gonna get 3 good years, you're telling me? I was like, wait, what's going on here? And that was part of what pushed me to try to figure it out more. But I think too, it's an interesting conversation with you, because I think too that putting myself in the position of being the one who even if it's not true, even if my wife was working just as hard and worried just as much as I was, which I believe she was, I still told myself this was on me. And so I almost had to figure it out because I didn't think I'd be able to hold it forever.
And see, I took a lot of the weight of this for a long time, for a good 5 months, it was my fault.
Mm.
And nobody could tell me different, because, we ended up in ICU with her in DKA. The night before that, she's laying on the couch and she just started, her cycle. So, I think that's what's wrong with it. And they had just started putting out Valentine's Day candy on the shelves. So I'm at the store and I see it and I was like, I'm going to get her some chocolate. She'll feel better. That's one thing I did learn from my wife. Chocolate makes everything better. But, so I gave a child who I don't know at this point is in DKA a box of chocolate.
Mm.
And the next day when we had to go to the hospital and we found out it was diabetes, just the guilt of that $1 box of chocolate was almost enough to push me over the edge.
Wow. In that moment, right? Because without any context, you'd feel every ounce of that as being the worst thing you could have possibly done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it took a while to swallow that. It really did.
Meanwhile, like, how many stories have you heard on the podcast where people are like, I was on my way to the hospital and I was like, one more go. Or there was a lady recently, it hasn't been on yet. She said that she's a younger girl, actually. She called a friend who had diabetes and her friend was like, get a big soda on the way. It's the last one you're ever going to have.
Yeah, I heard ones where somebody took their kid to a ball game and then went out to dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe that's not as bad as, okay, maybe I'm good.
Maybe you did all right, right? Well, no, isn't it interesting? Like, you didn't do it on purpose, but other people who see it coming, they're literally like, I just want one more day without this being an issue, which is, listen, academically foolish and emotionally, I understand it. So,
that's right.
Yeah. But it just, I mean, you didn't do anything. Now you know you're past it. But I'll tell you, the guilt's hard to let go of for a lot. I don't know if you heard that episode a number of weeks ago with Francisco Leone. He was on talking about teplizumab. And I always just thought, like, Arden had hand, foot, mouth, Coxsackie virus prior to getting diagnosed, which he talked about is like, he believes, he actually said he believes that coming up with a vaccine for Coxsackie virus will go a long way towards getting rid of type 1 diabetes. And that nothing I could have done would have stopped her from getting Coxsackie, because there was a long time in there where I just felt like, I told him, like, did I not wash my hands one time before I made dinner? Was I taking her to the wrong place? You know what I mean? Like, I had that whole feeling, like, we were very, like, we take our kids places, like, when they're little, like, I think we had Cole in a movie theater. He was, breastfeeding. He was a couple weeks old, and I'd take Arden to the zoo when she was 6 months old. And walk her, like, should I have not have done that? Like, it's always how he feels. And he absolved me. I felt like I was in confession, and he was like, it's okay. People, I don't know how many different ways I can say this to you, but you need and you deserve an accurate blood glucose meter. That's it. I know in the age of CGMs, right? You've got a Dexcom. You think, I don't need a meter, but you do. You still need a meter. And if you're going to have one anyway, and we know you're going to have one, why would you not have a good one? And I don't just mean like a good one, like not middle of the road. Get yourself a great blood glucose meter. It's not that hard, and they're not that expensive. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter is that glucose meter for me. Arden uses it. We love it. It is super simple to hold and handle. It has second chance test strips, a bright light for nighttime testing. Sometimes you need to, I lost my word. Sometimes you need to test your blood sugar in the dark. We're not bats, so we're going to need a light right on the front of the meter. Bing! Like, whew, nice and bright. Lights up the whole area. Also, the screen. Easy to read. Also, I find I like when the screen lights up, I use it for some ambient lighting at night when I'm testing. It's a big word, ambient. You're probably pretty impressed right now. But don't worry about me and my great grasp of the language. That's not what you should be excited about. You should be excited about having a great meter. A meter that, by the way, may be cheaper in cash than you're paying right now through your insurance. Or you can just run it through your insurance too. It really doesn't matter, but you have options. And those options are all spelled out at contournext.com/juicebox. But all that rigmarole aside, I want you to have a good, accurate meter that's easy to use and easy to carry. And that's why I'm glad, happy, actually thrilled that the Contour Next One blood glucose meter is a sponsor of the podcast. So for those of you who don't know what TrialNet is, again, it is a free, I want to stress free because there are other options out there that cost money, but TrialNet is free. It is a free type 1 diabetes risk screening. Now, at the very end of the episode, I'm going to go through probably a solid minute of information so you can really understand the nuts and bolts here. But here it is, brass tacks. TrialNet.org/juicebox. That's it. Go there, answer the questions, and if you're eligible, whoom, here comes your free risk screening. You can do it in your house. I mean, you could go do it at a lab if you wanted to, but you can actually do it at it's super simple. And if you want to know if you have the genetic markers for type 1 diabetes or if some loved one of yours has them, this is the way to find out. And there's a ton of good reasons to want to know. I'm going to tell you about them at the end, as well as the steps you can take. So for the show, for the podcast, just asking for the kit doesn't give me credit, okay? So all of you out there that want to help me, please don't just do that, okay? Don't just order the kit and not do anything with it. You have to follow through. You actually have to send it back in, and that's when the podcast gets credit for you using the kit. So I just want to mention that because I know you guys love me and I know you want to help, but just don't order them because you think you're helping Scott, okay? Only order them if you can complete them and send them back in. I do want to add here that when you use my link, there's going to be a drop-down box to ask you where you heard about it. If you don't choose Juicebox Podcast, they're not going to know you came through me, even though you came through my link. So use the podcast, trialnet.org/juicebox. But then when they ask you where you heard about it, please choose Juicebox Podcast. I'm going to give you all the other details at the end of the episode. You didn't, it's not your fault. And it was a big deal for me. Even 15 years later, I still wondered if I didn't just take her to the wrong place at the wrong time or do something that, even indirectly that could have impacted this. But I think Arden was getting diabetes one way or the other eventually.
I think it all happens for a reason. And that's you knew how stressed out I was about coming on to this podcast. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, you know what? I just got to get over it. We got to do it because, I don't know if there's some other 35-year-old redneck sitting in his pickup truck somewhere, beating a steering wheel, trying to figure out how to deal with this. And if something I say can inspire him to, stay in the game a little longer, I think that's why my daughter got this vicious disease,
Well, not only will your conversation help somebody, and it might be a person like you, but I know it's going to help people who have not one thing in common with you too, because you're going to have a perspective that they just never dreamt up before. And that's going to be interesting. I mean, listen, right now, I would imagine there's a female doctor listening to this who never once thought, I bet you guys might have trouble asking me for help. I wonder how that impacts what I do. Because it's all true. Like, you can sit around and be judgy about it. Like, Mike shouldn't feel weird about asking women or nobody should. Okay, perfect world, 100%. But that doesn't mean that's not how that works. Some guys have trouble listening to authority at all. So do some women. There's been plenty of stubborn women on here, who are like, I don't listen to people. I'm like, all right, well, okay. Yeah, nothing I can do about it, but maybe you should. Maybe you'll hear something that might be valuable for you. No, I like this a lot. I really do. It's not just because your messages just, now they crack me up and not because you're funny, but because I remember thinking like, what's up with this guy? And now I don't feel like that anymore. So now when I get a message from you, I'm like, oh, it's Mike. But so what did you figure out that's been most valuable for your daughter so far? through all this? Like, I mean, you went through all this consternation and you're hand wringing and upset and guilt ridden, but what came out of it?
That if I don't stress about the small stuff, the big stuff don't seem so big. And if I'm okay, if I'm calm, she's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And the time it is, you know, with the stress, you know, you can't hide from the stress. The stress is going to be there. So I might go take a shower and cry in the shower and come back out. She never knows that anything's wrong. And as long as she don't feel like nothing's wrong, she's fine.
That's where I used to like to cry, Mike. That was my spot. Hey, it's 5:30. I need a shower. Kelly's like, weird time to take a shower. I'm like, yeah, just need a shower.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it basically what it was is I had been up all night, and then 6, 7 o'clock in the morning with a 2-year-old who had diabetes, and I had made it about as far as I could without screaming, throwing something, or crying. And I just thought, crying's probably better than punching a wall, so I'll go do that now. And I agree. Like, you have to find a place to reset your emotions where you can't see. I mean, listen, there's plenty of people who have cried in a hospital room at a diagnosis and stuff like that. That's not the same thing. Like, that's in that moment, it's upsetting. But you're saying a year later, 5 years later, if you're upset, all it does is show the other person that you don't understand this either. It's not comforting for a 10-year-old.
That's right.
Yeah, she's got a number of more years where she gets to believe that you're Superman.
That's right. That's right. And keeping a smile on your face while you're dealing with a blood sugar over 200 is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But you got to do it. You got to do it because once she sees you lose your emotions, her emotions just going to make the blood sugar go up higher anyway.
I fail at that more often than I'd like to think I do. And I think it's possible I was just honest about it here so that one day, if Arden ever listens back to this whole thing, she'll know I knew. But yeah, there are times where sometimes it's not even anxiety. It's like you kind of go into your head to figure it out. And I know for me, like, I lose all the tone in my face and my face looks upset. Well, I'm thinking like, well, the food went here and the insulin went there and it's day 2 of the pump. Like, and you're kind of like doing all that math in your head and, and you're disappointed. Like sometimes, and it's not ever in the blood sugar really. I'm always just disappointed in either myself or, a decision I made earlier that messed me up now, that kind of stuff. And I should even say it's not disappointment. Like, I'm not beating myself up about it. It's just momentary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like you could have done that better,
yeah.
But you didn't.
Yeah, you're being honest with yourself for a second. Like, I'm not self-flagellating. I'm not gonna spend the next 20 minutes beating myself up about it. But in that moment, you're just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And I don't know if anybody has ever played baseball and you get caught off a base and as you're diving back and you're going to get picked off, like there's a lifetime worth of regret while your hand's reaching for the bag. You're just like, oh,
that's right.
I screwed this up. And then it's over. You stand up and it's over, but we had like a battle with ketones, our first one. Mm-hmm.
And it ended up being something wrong with the pump and we got over that. But ever since then, I go into my notepad in my phone. If she has to get insulin, if she eats something, I write down every detail of or why it worked or why it didn't work. Because kids love tacos. Tacos, I think, were made by the devil because they hit so crazy. But we almost got it to where it ain't going over 180 after she eats the tacos like 3 hours later.
And that feels like a hell of a win, doesn't it? And
yes, it does.
And you don't want to forget how you did it.
That's right, because it's just so, not all carbs are created equal. Mm. And, coming from a bodybuilding type atmosphere to, all I needed to know was the protein content to, well, now all these carbs, and now there's these, is it fruit carbs? Is it a bakery carb? I mean, they all hit different.
Yeah. There's I guess it's a Mexican like chain restaurant around here called Moe's. And
oh yeah, I like Moe's.
And it's one thing, like I've asked Arden, I was like, please don't eat the nachos from Moe's. Like if you could just like, so if she gets something from there, she'll bring them home and pair it with like a store-bought chip that is, I know how to handle. But the Moe's chips are just, there feels like there's not enough insulin to get it right. And there's still times where I'm like, go ahead and grab them if you want. But she's even like, nah, it's all right, I won't. Like she knows, and I'm hoping that that's a lesson for her down the line, that there are some things that it's just better to, you don't need those Moe's chips to live. You know what I mean? Like I'm hoping she gets that in her head, that there are going to be a couple things she's going to avoid because it's just going to make more trouble than it's worth.
That's right. And like in the beginning, they sent us out of the hospital. We got this piece of paper and it all says count carbs and divide it, and that's how much insulin you get. But then I read the side effects and the possible complications from insulin. And I was just like, okay, well, this is an easy fix. We're not going to eat any carbs. And I almost died 2 weeks in because of lack of carbs. I could not physically go another day. So we started with like 30 carbs a meal. And you're just not happy not eating that many carbs when you're used to eating pretty much whatever you wanted to. We're not carb crazy. We don't, and if people are, that's fine, but it just don't work for us.
Right.
And I don't really say, hey, you can't eat that, you can't do this, you can't do that, but I limit what she can have. But like stuff like cereal is just impossible. I have not figured out cereal yet.
It's took me a long time to get that right, like a significantly long time. And in the end, the answer ended up being, for Arden, it was just way more insulin than I could have imagined. That ended up just being the whole thing for her. It's, she needs a pre-bolus. Don't get me wrong. Starting with a lower number's incredibly helpful, but it's just way more than you think. So, and it might be different for other people. And it took me a long time to figure that out because of something that you mentioned earlier, is because at some point there's an amount of insulin where you're like, well, if I mess this up the wrong way, this is a lot of insulin. And, like, I don't want to make that mistake going the other way. So I just did it incrementally, just had a bowl of cereal, went wrong, corrected it, moved the correction into the bolus, just kept going until all the insulin was there when it needed to be, and ended up working. But having said that, Arden's older now, and, she might have a bowl of cereal like a month, not like she was back then, just day after day, when she was little. And oh my God, I messed it up so many times.
It's like, I think you actually talked me through, it was her birthday, and you actually talked me through the biggest carb meal she has ever ate, and it went perfectly.
That's cool. I'm glad.
100 carbs. And I almost had a heart attack giving her the shot, because that was when we was on just the insulin pens.
Yeah.
Scariest day of my life. I just knew something bad was going to happen, but nothing did.
It all worked out. I'm sorry it was a scary day for you. I have to tell you, like, you got right to, like, you figured me out, because I was like, little girl's birthday. All right, I'll help. Like, I don't want some little girl to have a shitty birthday, because I wouldn't text with her dad for a couple of minutes. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you knew how to get me, Mike. That was easy. I was in then. I'm so happy that it went well for you. And in the end, it was just put the insulin in the right place and use enough of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And weight, just the weight. When we were originally told to give insulin after she ate.
Oh.
Because I don't know why, but that's just what they told us to do. And I would notice her sugar would be like 200 before it even started to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept hearing this word bolus. I didn't know what a bolus was. And then pre-bolus got added to it. I was like, what is a pre-bolus? So I started, Google is my friend. So I look all this up and I'm like, oh. And I think it came, I ended up seeing something about 15 minutes before or something like that. And we started doing that. And that has worked amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Getting the insulin in the right place is incredibly important. I'll tell you, I say it all the time. It still kind of fascinates me every time, but doing those defining diabetes episodes, those shorter episodes where you just take one term and talk them through, I didn't realize how valuable those would be. I say it over and over again, but it wasn't until somebody told me I didn't know I used MDI until someone told me I did. And I thought, wow, people need to understand the terms because they're trying to employ these tools. They don't even know what they are. Like how much easier would it be if somebody just laid out for you, like, hey, guess what? This is what hypoglycemia is. Let's not assume that people understand anything. And, let's just define everything and not turn it into some classroom lesson that's boring and nobody wants to listen to. Like, people don't understand. You can put information in the world, but if it's not accessible, and accessible doesn't just mean that I can find it, but if it's not accessible intellectually or emotionally, people don't bother with it. Like, they have to want to listen to it. Then they have to actually listen to it. And it has to be in a way that it sticks with you when it's over. And then you have to realize that you put something into the world and it's red hot because it's new. And 6 months later, there's someone new who doesn't know what it is. Just last night, someone asked me online, they're like, I wish I understood why my kid's blood sugar goes up in the morning. And my first thought, as a content creator, is I went over this. Like, like, it's in the thing, go find it, right? But I can't expect that. So I'm just like, okay, hey, well, I would try this episode and this episode. There's 2 defining diabetes episodes about, one of them's called Feet on the Floor and one of them's called, this, and go listen to those. And then you hear back from the person, oh, that was great. That's exactly what was happening to me. So you have to also realize that if you're going to be putting this information out, that you're going to be doing it over and over again. And you can't feel like, oh, I've already said this, because it's, helping people with diabetes is a lot like being a parent in my mind, in that you have to say the same thing over and over again 1,000,000 times and never say it once like you're irritated or bothered by it. And if you can do that, then you can help a lot of people. But if you get all like, I already said this, then, you put a nice thing out into the world that nobody can find anymore.
It's like, I've gotten comfortable enough now to go on some of these Facebook groups, and when somebody has a question, I'm comfortable enough now to put my 2 cents into it. And I always make sure to tell them, they're doing great. No matter what the situation is, I tell them they're doing great. And that's what I'm learning. People will listen to you a little bit more, when you're not scolding them and wagging your finger at them,
Yeah. You listen, when you're looking down at a 20-foot hole and there's a person in the bottom of it that fell into it, leading with, how did you not see that? It's probably not a good way to make them feel good about it.
That's right. Throw them down a rope.
I can't believe you fell down there. That was asinine, wasn't it? I mean, it's a big hole. There's a sign. You didn't see the sign? Thanks. No, I didn't. I'm in the hole. So now you need to be I do my best online to just say good job to people. I mean, it's becoming, it's a self-perpetuating problem. The more popular the podcast gets, the more people there are to say a good job to, which is delightful, but it's hard to keep up with. And sometimes I think, I know I missed people, and I hope they understand that I don't see everything, but every time, great job, well done. This is amazing, because it is, and somebody should say it. So
especially seeing so many parents trying, they're trying, and that's all. This is all diabetes takes, is the effort. If you're willing to put the effort in, you're going to get good results.
Yeah, as long as you know which way to put the effort. I mean, because there's nothing worse, right, than putting in all that effort, doing it wrong, you still put the effort out and you get nothing in return. You still have the same problem when it's over. It's like trying to dig a hole with a keyboard. You just, you're killing yourself and you're not getting anywhere. So I just like to make sure they're holding a shovel when they're digging a hole. That's all.
That's right.
It seems simple. Hey, your job has become, if I'm understanding what your job is, I'm fascinated by your job because I am a person who things seem to hit my windshield every year or so. But it's turned into like a real home job. Like it used to have to go to a guy and take it to a place and drop it off. And now like somebody just rolls up to your house and an hour later is like, can I get a check? And they leave. It's amazing.
Yeah. I still do everything in shop. I'm still very old school.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I can control the climate.
Okay.
But there's thousands of guys out there now doing it in yards, and there's some really great technicians that still do it on the road like that.
Yeah. I've got a guy that's so good at it, but he's one of those people. It's funny when you talk about how people seem to other people. He's a guy that if I pulled him out of the world and said, here, talk to this man for 10 minutes, would you let him replace the windshield in your car? You'd go, I don't think so. But he's so good at it. Like it's just
that is every single auto glass technician. I promise you, we're all the same.
Oh, okay. I didn't find that one guy. He's awkward to text with. It's funny now that I'm talking about it. I like talking to him in person. I hate talking to him on the phone, and he does an amazing job.
I can promise you he hates talking on the phone at the same as much as you do.
So I'm just reading his desire to get the hell out of this phone call, I see.
Yep.
That's hilarious. Yeah, but you got to have a guy that does a good job with that because something is going to smack your windshield eventually. And then, but I'll tell you, I've never felt so good about my life. There's that my auto policy has that $100 glass thing. Like no matter what piece of glass I break, it costs me $100 to get it fixed. And
it is worth it to keep it. I promise you.
I'll tell you. Oh, trust me. I know over and over. We once broke that. We had a glass on the top of our car and we broke that. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be expensive. Nope. It's $100. I was like, yeah, finally.
There you go.
Things going my way, Mike.
See, we're in South Carolina. You don't have to pay nothing.
Really?
Yep.
No, that would be better.
Yeah. Because they know the roads here are so bad. You can't drive without getting something broke.
I once got a windshield broken at a spot on a highway. And 5 years later, at what felt like the exact same spot on the highway, a windshield in a different car got broken.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, is that a coincidence? Or is there something about the pitch of this road? Like is the whole world breaking windshields right here? Like, I don't know. It happened so long ago and I can't let go of it. Every time I drive through there, I'm like, here it comes.
You're watching your windshield. Make sure.
I'm just this close to rolling the window down and waving my hand in front of the car while I'm just trying to knock it. Anyway, that's hilarious. So is there anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping to, or were you just hoping not to?
I was hoping not to sound like a moron this whole time.
You had small goals. Well, you didn't sound like a moron. So that's a mission accomplished. Yeah, mission accomplished. You're all set. Your daughter now is using an insulin pump?
That's right. She's using Omnipod.
And a CGM, Dexcom.
That's right.
And are you thinking of going to Omnipod 5 when the algorithm comes out?
You talking about the Horizon thing?
Yeah, they changed the name of it. So yeah, Horizon.
Did they really?
Yeah, they're calling it Omnipod 5 now. But is that on your should I say, is that on the horizon for you? Because that seems very ham-fisted. But are you thinking about that?
I am. But, with any new technology, there's going to be some kinks in it. So I'm going to be kind of slow getting to it because I'm comfortable with this Omnipod. I understand how to use it. I understand all the little different things I could do with it. So I'm going to wait and just read what people say about the new Omnipod when it comes out. Okay.
Well, I think we're going to try it. So I should be able to tell you how it goes. Just trying to get a hold of it right now. So
there was in one of your episodes, you said, you don't want to be the person, that looks up one day and realizes that nobody treats diabetes this way anymore.
Yeah.
And, so I really try to keep an eye out on what's coming down.
Yeah. I just think don't jump for the sake of jumping, but don't get into a position where you're like, wait, no one does it like this. You know, like
Exactly.
you don't want to get so comfortable. Like in my opinion, like, you know, you don't want to be in your mid 30s saying, hey, I got a 6.7 A1C. It's great. Sure, that kid over there has a 5.3, but this is good because, you know, it's situational for the part of time when you come up. Like, because for that 35-year-old person, you know, the goal used to be 8, and they're 6.7. They're like, wow, I'm killing this. And I don't have to learn anything else to do this. But if I'm not saying that one day that, you know, you're going to have an A1, everyone's going to have an A1C in the 4s, but I mean, maybe they will. Like, maybe the technology will get so good that that'll actually be possible. I have no idea, but wouldn't that be cool? And if that's happening, you know, you don't want to be the person who's like, oh, I just don't want to do it. Now, that feeling from me comes from my buddy, Mike. But he came up in a regular and MPH world, and he stayed with that for so much longer than he should have. And then once he tried to go to a faster acting insulin and a basal, he was just like, he had been doing it for so long, he couldn't figure it out. And, you know, he waited too long. And I realized that coming from regular and MPH going to Novolog is not going to be the same as having a 6.7 on a pump and being able to get a 5 with an algorithm. But, you know, I mean, it's still, the idea is still there. It's just maybe not as harsh as my example, but I don't know. That's colored how I think of it.
Yeah. Slow and steady change is better than a big jump.
Right.
And
yeah. You let me,
and that's what I'm learning. Diabetes was definitely a good teacher on that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, let somebody like me do that, and let Jenny figure that out, and then tell you which way's up, and you can decide what you want to do for yourself. But yeah, everybody shouldn't be jumping like that. That freaks me out when people are like, I got a T-Slim, now I have a Medtronic, I'm gonna get an Omnipod. I'm like, just like, wow, get a puppy. You need something to do. Like, just you sound bored. I don't know. I have a friend who replaces televisions before they're done. And I'm like, why? This one still works. She's like, that one's better. I'm like, but the one you have is still fine. Like, just use it a little longer or sell it or do something. Like, I don't know. They're jumping around too much. I get it. Like, technology can feel like that, but when it's your health, it's a little weird. But I mean, I guess to each his own. What do I really care if you want to jump around in some pumps? Doesn't matter to me. So Mike, do you have any questions? Like, I mean, you have plenty of questions when we're not on the podcast. Do you have any now?
Actually, not right now, because I think I actually got a good handle on it now.
Yeah, that's excellent.
As I say that, something's bound to happen in the next couple of days where I'm like, oh, well, I got to text Scott.
If you text me anything in the next couple of days, it's going in the end of this episode. I'm going to read it into it at the end when I go to do editing on this. Well, I mean, listen, man, I really appreciate you doing this. I really do. Like you've our relationship has been very unique, and I just thought it would be strange not to document it like this at the end here, because you are gonna ride off into the sunset. Like you have that feeling about you. Like you're there, and you know you're fine tuning now, and it's been very interesting to watch you figure the whole thing out. And you know, I know you said you try to tell people they're doing a good job, but if no one's told you, let me be the first one to say it to you, because you started about as confused as I've ever seen anybody. And the person you are now, just a year later, is it's fairly it's impressive what you've accomplished and the things you've kind of gotten through and climbed over to get to the place you are now. So, you know, great job.
I appreciate that. I just want to say thank you for letting me come on here and ramble on for a little while. And what you do is an amazing thing. I don't know if you fully grasp how much you actually help people or not, but it definitely is life-changing what you do.
That's very nice. I appreciate it. Listen, I try to grasp it, but by the time I get downstairs and mention it to anyone else, they beat it right back out of me again. So don't you worry. They must have a sensor. I don't know if it's an air sensor or if it's something on me, but everyone must get a signal on their phone. It's like, oh, he's starting to feel good. Let's get him back down to level. Hold on a second. I interviewed 3 girls last night at the same time. 13-year-old girl, a 15-year-old girl, and a 17-year-old girl. They all live on Grand Cayman Island together, which is apparently a place that's only about 29 miles across and only 60,000 people live on it. These 3 girls have type 1 diabetes and found each other. And it just was such an interesting thing to talk to them and to learn about them and see how they just, they created this little group that they exist in. I mean, I don't know, how many 17-year-olds do you know are very good friends with a 13-year-old? You know what I mean? Yeah. And these 3 girls they're just far enough in age that they don't kind of belong together, but then you talk to them and they fit perfectly. And I'm having this conversation with them. It was really delightful. I loved it. I get done. My wife's like, how was it? And I started telling her, she goes, Cole said. So Cole walks past the door, heard me say something, and I don't know what I said, but he goes down to my wife and he goes, why do people listen to him? And I was... And he goes, he's like, he said this, and then he laughed. I don't know why people listen to this. And my wife's like, it's, a lot of people do. And he's like, I don't understand it. And so that's what I'm going to hear from you that I help a lot of people. And then I'm going to walk out that door and people are going to be like, oh, it's him. So I imagine it's the same in everyone else's home too, between them and their children and et cetera. But I really appreciate your sentiment. And if it makes you happy to know, I am aware of what the podcast does, and trying very hard to not let it cloud how I do it. So I'm just trying to keep going and do it the way that I know that it works. I don't want to get to the end of this one day and look back and see that I lost my mind at some point, because it's a heady thing for one person to tell you, hey, you did a thing that helped me this much and it's health related. And when that turns into 10 people, it feels nice. When it's 100 people, it's overwhelming. When it becomes thousands of people, it's, you have to work to keep perspective about it. And I feel like I've done that. I sat and answered emails last night, and each one of them was really amazing and it felt very important to me. But if I told you that I probably had 20 emails that read exactly like that from last month from 20 different people, like, I'm not lying. And so it's an interesting exercise to answer everybody as a unique person and not feel like you're recycling your feelings. So I'm learning a lot about myself too doing this. So I appreciate the opportunity from all you guys.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah. Listen, I appreciate you calling yourself a redneck too while you're on. Like, I thought that was just the most delightful part of it. I don't think colloquially I'm allowed to put it in the title, but it was very interesting to hear somebody just very casually be like, I was like, that's terrific.
It is what it is.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to say goodbye, and then I'm going to tell you something I said on a recording recently that I'm struggling as to whether or not I can keep in. So thank you very much. Hold on one second. First, I'd like to thank the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and remind you to go to contournext.com/juicebox. Also, there are links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com. I also want to thank the new sponsor, TrialNet. TrialNet.org/juicebox. When you get there and you're signing up for your free type 1 diabetes risk screening kit, don't forget to tell them when it asks you, where'd you hear about this? You say Juicebox Podcast. There's a drop-down box. You choose Juicebox Podcast. You'll see. It'll be right there. I'm going to give you all the details after the music. But first, I want to thank Michael for coming on the show. I really, like I said, enjoy Michael, and I was thrilled to talk with him. Okay. I'm looking at my email here with all of the pertinent information, expertly written by my friend at TrialNet. But first, I want to give you a summary of TrialNet. It is available at no cost to relatives of people with type 1 diabetes. TrialNet risk screening identifies T1D in its earliest stages, often years before symptoms appear. Early detection allows you to take steps to try to change the course of the disease. TrialNet offers prevention studies, testing, and ways to slow or stop the disease progression. For people who take part in clinical trials, the risk of diabetic ketoacidosis, a serious and potential life-threatening condition, drops from 30% to less than 3%. So when you're hearing all those stories of people who are diagnosed in DKA, being in these trials, from 30% to 3%. Okay, so here it is. Step 1, eligibility. TrialNet.org/juicebox. Immediate family members under the age of 45 and second-degree family members under the age of 20. You will qualify for risk screening if you are between the ages of 2.5 and 45 years old and have a parent, brother, sister, or child with type 1 diabetes. You will qualify if you are between the ages of 2.5 and 20 years old and have an aunt, uncle, cousin, grandparent, niece, nephew, or half-brother or sister who has type 1 diabetes. You will also be eligible if you have tested positive for autoantibodies outside of TrialNet. Okay, that's step 1. That's eligibility. The signing up part is next. Visit trialnet.org/juicebox, answer a few quick questions to see if you are eligible, and then join thousands of T1D families on the pathway to prevention. Don't forget when they ask you where you heard about this, say Juicebox Podcast, or they will not know you came from me. So that's the part where you'll be able to help the podcast. And remember, it's not just asking for it that helps the podcast. It's asking for it, saying you heard from it through me, completing the kit, and returning it. That's a complete cycle. Without a complete cycle, it doesn't matter if you came through my link. Now, after you do all that, a kit is going to get delivered right to your door. In-home testing kit, right? This free kit provides everything you need to collect a fingerstick blood sample from the safety of your own home. You can ship it back free using FedEx, contactless, at-home pickup, right? Or you can ask for a lab test kit, and then you can take the free screening kit to any Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp lab for a blood draw. That's it. Oh, wait, that's not it. There's actually, oh my goodness, look at this. TrialNet locations near you, so you might even be able to do that. All right, so let's go over that again. In-home test kit where you collect it yourself, send it back free through FedEx. A lab test kit that you take to Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp. Or you might be able to find a TrialNet location near you. It is pretty handy. Now, step 4 are the results. You will receive your screening results in 4 to 6 weeks. If your results show that you are in early stages of T1D, TrialNet will schedule a follow-up visit to see if you are eligible for a prevention study. Isn't that cool? Now, why would you want to do this? Here's some quick facts. T1D family members are at a 15 times greater risk to develop type 1 diabetes than the general population. T1D risk screening will detect if you are in the early stages of type 1. If you are identified as at risk, TrialNet is then there for you. They have prevention trials. If your screening results show you are in early stages of type 1, you may be eligible to join a prevention study and help test ways to slow or stop the disease progression. They also have ongoing monitoring by top type 1 diabetes researchers. And if you develop type 1, being monitored in a clinical research study like TrialNet decreases your chances of DKA, again, from 30% to 3%. And if that's not enough, you can help the greater good. A future without type 1 diabetes could start with you. Research can only advance with participants. The more participants who are involved in clinical research, the faster we will get answers. You're in a unique position to identify treatments that will slow or stop T1D from happening. In the last 20 years, TrialNet has been the leading network in type 1 diabetes prevention research. In addition to being able to accurately predict who is going to develop type 1 diabetes, TrialNet has now found a way to delay it by leading the teplizumab prevention trial. Teplizumab is the first drug to delay T1D for a median of 2 years. This is an incredible advancement that gets us all one step closer to our ultimate goal, a future without type 1. TrialNet.org/juicebox. Tell them you came through me, get your kit, get it back to them, find out what's up. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.